You're listening to the We Are Libertarians Podcast Network. Find all of our shows at wearelibertarians.com. You're listening to the We Are Libertarians Network. Learn more at wearelibertarians.com.
Welcome to the Boss Hog of Liberty podcast. This is episode number 204 of East Central Indiana's favorite podcast. Jeremiah Morrell here, joined by an empty co-host chair. We never really tried that hard this week. We
didn't at all.
It was going to be great no matter what.
Darrel used to work in radio.
Dakota Davis is here. Zach Burcham's on the producer's desk, and we've got a very special gentleman here, Dakota.
That's right. Today's episode features Mr. Darrel Radford. You may recognize the name if you're a local from the Courier-Times. Darrel just recently retired from the Courier-Times. We're going to be talking to him about what it's like to be a legendary reporter in Henry County. And also, Greg Pence is playing hooky over during the week this week, I guess.
There was nowhere else he'd rather be.
That's right. We had a high-speed chase that originated in Henry County this afternoon. Breaking news. And something about, because we do it this way, and this is having to do with the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and COVID-19.
This is the thing Dakota tried to skip out, and I said, no, I'm putting this back in the show notes. Mister, I'm trying to delete what Jeremiah wanted to talk about.
You had a whole racing episode last week.
That was about politics.
Okay.
If you went back and listened to it, you'd know.
We're also, I guess, going to talk about the Emerald Ash Borer, which is super important and very vital information. I'm being dead serious about that. Make sure you stick around until the very end.
Oh, this is going to be a fun show. This show is about our lives in rural Indiana. Here to push your boundaries and make you think as individuals. Sometimes we'll provoke you, other times we'll make you laugh, but hopefully you'll always learn something new. Dakota, we just did 20 minutes in Patreon.
That's right. Patreon.com/Boss Hog of Liberty. That is where you can go to support the show each and every month. Those folks are our super top tier fans. They're in a fan club. They get access to a super secret Facebook group.
They get the show notes.
3
minutes before everybody else gets them.
That's right. No one else gets them.
Well, I mean, before the
only those people.
At the same time that the people are on the show get them. They literally get them at the same time.
Yeah, that's true. They do. We this week during the Patreon portion, 2 weeks ago, we tried Vegemite on toast.
Yes,
which was horrific. This week, which was brought to you by Anthony Meyer, Patreon member, he told us to try a candy bar called Violet Crumble. I keep wanting to say violent.
Violent.
I guess I just have the violence on the brain. Watch out, Darrel. I thought it was delicious. Jeremiah and everybody else had mixed thoughts. I guess we'll see. You have to join the Patreon to find out exactly what everybody thought about it. You can start at $5 a month. You can go all the way up to however. There's no limit at the top.
There's really no limit on the bottom end either.
There's not.
We suggest $5, but we'll take $1. I don't care.
Mason Rotting House is in for like $1.43 a month. It doesn't really matter. We suggest $5 is the lowest tier. As you go up, you do get certain benefits along the way. And if you donate at $50 or more a month, then we give you a shout out at the front of every episode. Those folks are our favorite car dealer, Mr. Jonathan Lamb.
Phillips.
Whoa.
Boy, you're jumping.
Jonathan Lamb, that's
takes
way back.
Takes 1 week off and that's lost himself.
4 years ago. Jonathan Lamb, if you don't know, is a former guest who ran for Congress against Greg Pence the first time he ran.
Wrote a book, too.
Yeah.
Mr. Jonathan Phillips at Annie Moore Buick and GMC. Tell him that I sent you so I can get a $100 check if you buy a car. Christy Avery from all the way in Fort Wayne, the most generous libertarian that we know. And then also Mr. Chris Lamb. That's right. Who is one of our favorite cigar. He is our favorite cigar aficionado and the biggest Boss Hog Liberty fan to date. He will
personally go to Cuba, bring back the cigars for you. I think that's the whole business model.
With Obama.
That may not be true.
Obama goes too. Because, Obama's the one that opened up the market.
He's got the special plane.
tchip.com/BHOL1, 2, 3, or 4 or BHOL mug is where you can go to get your Boss Hog of Liberty merchandise. We have the first 3 are all clothing lines. Number 4, we don't even need anymore. So make sure that you go and get it because it's the masks. And you're in Indiana, you're a free person now. You don't need the masks anymore.
Well, if you want to go to the race, you're going to need it.
We'll talk about that later. And then BHOL mug, we have ceramic mugs, and they look like they're just black regular mugs. Whenever you pour your coffee into it, the color changes and reveals the Boss Hog of Liberty logo. Producer Zach Burcham is going to put all of those links in the show note, or in the show notes, in the live stream chat, and that'll make it easier for you to click on them. I think that's
Are you settled?
I think that's done.
You took
Patreon is how we pay for the show. It's very important. I was talking to Darrel before the show, and Darrel was telling me that his son likes to listen to the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. I also like to listen to it. That's what the sticker is on somewhere I'm pointing behind me, the Run JRE sticker. I'm also a fan of that podcast, and one thing that I've picked up from there is the ad breaks in the middle of the shows are super annoying. Joe Rogan doesn't do that. He doesn't like to stop his show and do an ad read. If you listen to Ben Shapiro, for example, he's one of the absolute worst. I can't even stand to listen to
You'll be mid-conversation with Darrel, and all of a sudden it's 3 minutes for a supplement.
And it's like every 10 minutes. It's like actual radio, which is like the opposite of what we're trying to do with podcasts. We're trying to just have conversations with our guests. Patreon.com/Boss Hog of Liberty. That is how we can keep from doing the advertisements mid-show all the time. We don't want to have to do that. And thankfully, so far we haven't really had to, but everybody could help. We really don't make any money off the show. We just try to make sure that it pays for itself.
This is a break-even business.
Yeah.
It covers
barely,
the expenses.
just barely.
I always tell people this is like my golf game. It's a golf game hobby that pays for itself.
And, it still doesn't actually totally pay for itself. You and I both have things that we have to pay for.
Yeah, we do some stuff on our own.
Yeah. So
that's okay.
We're kind of close. We make it work.
Close enough for government work.
That's right. Darrel, let's talk about you for a minute. I gave you the title of a legendary reporter from Henry County because I know for as long as I've been reading the paper, your name has appeared under every single article about public meetings that I can ever remember.
Well, you're very kind. I have been around for a while. I don't know if legendary is accurate or not, but I started writing when I was 17 years old. I was a senior at Blue River High School and was fortunate enough, a classmate of mine, her mother worked at the Henry County News Republican.
You're not that old because you didn't say at Moreland High School or Mount Summit High School, right?
My first 6 years were at Moreland.
All right.
In fact, I remember going home for lunch. I had never set foot into a cafeteria until I was in the 7th grade. I went home for lunch every day. It was great. I had a great childhood. But this friend of mine in high school, her name was Donann Hoopengarner. Her mother worked at the Henry County News Republican. I asked her, I said, "Hey, I'm interested. Is there any way I can write sports?" And so I started writing sports for the Henry County News Republican, met Miles Marshall, and I'm sure that you have some of your listeners who will remember that name. Miles was a politician here. He was the Henry County clerk for, I think, 2 terms. He was an excellent speaker. He played the role of Santa Claus on the radio, and his columns were just, in fact, I was talking to Zach. He wrote a column about Milo Burcham that I still remember, and I think I still have, actually. So it was a real thrill to get started then, that young, and I loved it, and I've loved it ever since. I started writing sports for the Courier as a correspondent for a guy named Rick Smith when I was at college. And I have been associated with the Courier probably in one form or another, maybe not full-time, but writing here and there ever since the mid-'70s.
That's incredible. Wow. And you've had tours with other you were the newspaper up in Jay County? Right?
Yeah.
Winchester.
I wrote in my farewell column, I've come and gone at the Courier about 5 or 6 times. various circumstances. Some not good, some my fault, some not my fault. I didn't think, but I always left the door open, and thankfully I was always able. I didn't burn the bridge.
Right.
It was damaged, but it wasn't burned. I wrote Little League columns as a volunteer. I wrote band stories as a volunteer. If they needed me for anything, I wasn't hesitant to help out. But in the times that I wasn't there, I had the opportunity to work at Winchester, which was a daily newspaper when I went over there. I think it was about 2014. And shortly after I went there, they went to 2 days a week. Maybe there's a connection there. I don't know.
Well, I don't think it's you. It's local small town papers, and it's something we've talked about in the show for the entire existence of it. And one of the reasons why I've been tried to be so supportive of local media. Everybody wants those stories and wants to hear from it, but it is a struggle. Circulation isn't great. People want to just get stories for free on the internet, and they don't realize that somebody like Darrel or Travis or Kevin Green is taking their evenings and having to get paid because it's their job to go sit in a county council meeting or city council meeting.
And not everybody can do that. One of the pet peeves I have is that the powers that be sometimes think that you can pull anybody off the street, ask them to go to a city council meeting, and they can write a story about it. That is not true.
I don't know that I could. I don't think I could sit down and write a competent news story. Writing the first story when Travis Wyke and I have been friends a very long time, since before we went to the paper, and he started writing as the education reporter. And I was impressed at the first story that he wrote because I'm like, I literally couldn't sit at my laptop and say, okay, this is the composition that I'm supposed to have to write a news story, to have the voice that's required for the news. That's a special skill set, and it's not. The average person's not just going to have that. Sit down today, and I need you to write a story about this meeting.
I've long felt that good reporting has been undervalued by the newspaper industry as a whole. And I think that's why we're where we are today. Now, the problem is, back in the day, newspapers made their money by selling ads. And, that was the big, people think that their subscription price is too high. Well, that doesn't cover even a third of the total expenses of putting out a newspaper. And, that money was made up by, selling display ads. Well, the display ad market is basically gone now. You don't see a lot of display ads. Businesses have other ways to get the word out. And of course, with the advent of social media, makes it even more difficult. Newspapers have had to try to kind of learn new tricks, so to speak, to stay in business. Yeah. And so that has complicated everything. And I am here to tell you, though, that the day that they shut the doors at the Courier and the Courier is no more, and I hope that's far into the future. I think they've done a really good job of keeping it a daily newspaper. Like I said, Winchester was daily, and it went to twice a week. Rushville has no paper anymore, and they used to be a daily paper. So I think Newcastle folks ought to be appreciative of the fact that they still have a 5-day-a-week paper. Yeah. And the day that paper goes away is going to be a sad day because just the obituaries. I was thinking just about the obituaries. If somebody dies out of state, the first place they call is the local newspaper. Now, if the newspaper isn't there, someone dies out of state, how are they going to get that word out to the Henry County folks? Yeah. A lot of the local funeral homes have Facebook pages, but that isn't going to help if someone dies out of state.
And it's not necessarily an aggregator, right? The newspaper pulls together the obituaries from all the different communities.
Yes.
And everything of local interest that matters.
It was you're talking about the future if the Courier ever goes away. But
this has gone to a very dark place. Not where we were trying to take the conversation.
So I guess I'll circle back for a moment. I haven't done it in a long time, but I loved writing as a child, all throughout high school. I did some stuff with, first of all, in elementary school we had an elementary school newspaper at Tri. It's called the Titan Times.
I remember that. Yes.
4th, 5th, and 6th grade. And then through middle school, high school, I did some stuff with the high school newspaper. I really enjoyed writing short stories, poems, and also writing music. I wanted to be an author for a really long time in high school. And I always imagined, I guess in probably like 7th or 8th grade, both of those years probably, how I imagined my future was sitting in some busy newsroom, like in the 1980s, where people wore like the tie proppers with the metal bar underneath the Windsor knot. I imagined myself in one of those roles in a busy news office, busily writing on a typewriter or something in middle school. And it's been kind of sad for me to drive by the Courier-Times office and see that it's closed, because I would always, my grandpa would take me there as a little kid, like 5 or 6. Some of my earliest memories are going and eating outside of the Courier-Times office because I always loved the look of that office. So it's kind of brought back a lot of those memories as I've seen the whole place close down. Like that will never be again.
Change is relentless, and newspapers have tried very hard to change with the times. And I still believe there's a place for newspapers. And I think that, as I said before, I think people should support the Courier with everything they can, because it would be missed terribly if the day ever came that it didn't exist. You talk about the noise of the newsroom. I used to love the noise of the newsroom. When I started, I was writing stories on a Royal typewriter, a manual typewriter. And if you have about 10 of those going at once, it's quite a sound. And then I would write my story on a Royal typewriter. I would hand it to somebody who then retyped it.
I was going to ask, you're literally analog typing this yourself, and then you've got somebody else that's going to put it in the type to put it in the newspaper.
Yes.
And that's after your editor said it's okay.
Yes. She would retype it,
and the whole place is filled with cigarette smoke and.
Yeah. Well, and talk about smoke-filled rooms. I mean, when I covered city council meetings back in the 80s.
Apparently, Newports are illegal now. That happened yesterday. So no more cigarettes.
If I came home after a council meeting, my wife would say, "Get those clothes off and take a shower and or stay out in the garage," because it was pretty bad.
Darrell, you're making me nostalgic for a time I never even knew.
So you would go to a county council meeting and there were ashtrays on the table.
Yeah.
People smoking.
Yeah.
Wow. And now Aaron Dickin wants to take away your ability to even smoke on the sidewalk.
I remember going to Bob Evans with my grandpa and him smoking while we ate lunch. If that counts for anything?
My elementary school principal.
Am I old now?
In the building. When I was like first, second grade, our elementary school principal smoked in the building.
Oh boy!
He would walk the hall. He was smoking a pipe, so at least it smelled good. He would be walking the hall smoking a pipe in elementary school when I was a kid. So yeah, different time.
Dick Leach was the God rest his soul. He was a great guy. Great guy. I always enjoyed talking to Dick. He always had a big cigar at the council meetings.
County council?
No, city council.
Okay.
City council. Yes. Yeah. In fact, I wrote a feature story about him when he retired, and I mentioned the cigar, and he called me and he said, "Well, that's a good story, Darrell, but I quit smoking cigars about 3 years ago."
At least that's what the insurance company thought.
My neighbor growing up he was an older man, and he smoked cigars, and I would always see him out mowing his lawn with a giant cigar in his mouth. And he would always have it like clamped down in the side of his mouth. And then one time, my dad was talking to him across the fence, like we're in an episode of Home Improvement. And I went over there and stood next to my dad and was totally aghast by the fact that the man, his lip had a permanent half circle indentation from all the times that he had that cigar clamped to his mouth. His lip was always pushed down, even without it there. Yeah. Crazy. What?
So you started as a sports reporter, which I didn't know.
Yes.
You wound up transitioning into the government role, which is what I've grown to know you in writing that. Of course, in a local paper, you're versatile. You write about bands. You write about everything. Right. You probably covered Zach when he was a band nerd at Newcastle.
Yeah, he probably did. He also had a niece that was the drum major at Blue River.
Yeah, Jill.
Yeah.
Jill. Yeah.
So you probably
Yeah,
covered.
shout out to Joe. Yeah. I wrote about the Blue River Band, and you guys were good. You guys had a really good band her senior year.
I was in Newcastle, but yeah, we were both, but yeah, good band times at the time. Blue River and Newcastle were both real good.
So you probably covered me as well with the Titan marching band before
Was,
my stint with the Libertarian Party.
Toby Benson, your director.
Yeah.
Good
Which,
guy. Good
does
guy.
it irk you both as much as it irks me to see the marching bands in the local parades and they're wearing like t-shirts and basketball shorts? Because that drives me freaking crazy. You know how much work we put in to making the marching band look awesome? Like having to practice walking and you're in those ridiculous uniforms and everybody looks super fly and you're making sure that your head doesn't bob up and down. Nowadays, these softy kids have it so easy. Just walking in shorts and tennis shoes.
Sometimes yes. And I will say this: Newcastle had a thing. We did field shows too, and we would sometimes if the weather was bad enough, we would put them away because we're like we saved these for field shows. But we did the 500 Festival Parade like in the rain in uniform, and that was awful. So I don't blame them. Sometime when it's like 90 degrees. Because you're just like, that's a dry cleaning bill.
Dakota, have you had your 5-year high school reunion yet?
Yeah. Yep. We're prepping for the 10th. My best friend.
Your class of 2015?
We're prepping for 20.
14.
My best friend was the class president. And we didn't even have a 5-year reunion. He texted me like a month beforehand. He was like, hey, man.
I would have been class of 2001, so I'm at 20.
Are you guys having a reunion? I'm just curious.
Well, every day is a reunion for a homeschool kid.
Well, that's true.
I wake up, I look at myself in the mirror, and I say, "We're all the team's all here. We all made it.
The gang's all here."
There's some concern out there, and Newcastle Homecoming is coming up, I think, this year.
Yeah, every 4 years.
And there's some concern as time marches on that homecoming might be in jeopardy because classes don't get together like they used to. There are some classes like in the 50s and 60s, those folks get together frequently, every year.
Yeah, my mom's, her class gets together. She was the first graduating class at Shenandoah High School. And they can all get together and like hang out in somebody's garage. Like there's that few of them just because the class wasn't that big. And somebody hit me up because I was involved in our last class reunion. They said, "Are we going to do one for 20 this year?" I was like, "I don't know, man. We haven't really talked. Pandemic thing happened, and we're not sure." We had a 5. When we mean I had a 5, we might have just done a 10. And yeah, now some people are just like, oh, like I've got friends who are like the people I want to keep track of. I keep track of on Facebook. I don't need to do anything else. So. That's kind of the attitude of some folks.
That's exactly what I was
I think Facebook has really
has replaced the requirement of getting together.
It has, yes.
My mom graduated from high school in Moore, Oklahoma, and the majority of her time was in Newcastle, Wyoming. She doesn't go back for those. My dad, I don't think, has ever made a reunion in the 25 years he's lived in Indiana. At graduating high school in New York, at the traveling side, I don't see people making it a priority, right, wrong, or indifferent. I don't know. Of course, all of our parents were in high school before we really knew them. So I don't know what their experience was like either. I
like the vast majority of my graduating class, and I think I'd enjoy catching up with those folks again. I don't keep up with people like that on Facebook. I just don't. Facebook is like dedicated to my hobbies.
Not your friends.
That's really it. That's just how it is. I don't really want to bother with keeping up with someone's opinions on current events. I just want to look at woodworking and guns.
So back to Darrel's career.
Yeah.
We talked about covering government side, and one of the things that I know that you touched on in your farewell column was the election nights and the chance to be a part of the conversation and to chase it down. And I know it's different now than it was, now it's, okay, here's the election results. Go get it.
Yes,
back 15, 20, 30 years ago, you were sitting there watching precinct by precinct come in on a whiteboard and you had some drama.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was always a fun evening I really enjoyed covering elections, and I had a kind of a teammate, Delora Hartsock, which you guys may have met. Delora.
I know Delora very well.
Yeah. And she and I really worked well together. We would kind of split up, going to this headquarters or that headquarters. We'd compare notes. We'd look at the results as they came in. We'd kind of speculate on what results were still out there. And my wife, Becky, she helped us put together a precinct by precinct chart, which I don't think is done anymore. It takes some effort to do that. My wife's a CPA. She's an accountant, and she is very good at typing in Excel. And it didn't take her very long to put that precinct by precinct chart together. And that was very interesting to show you how the vote went in certain areas of town and certain areas of the county. And it could show you some surprising results, or it could verify, well, that's a Democrat stronghold or a Republican stronghold. But it gave you something to analyze the election with. I always loved election night; thought it was great, and that'll be one thing that I miss as time goes on, and I'm not associated with that part of the newspaper anymore. I'll always have a special place with election night, in my heart.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. I know we've sat here and done election night coverage, both primaries and general election, and then done it as a candidate as well. And it's a very roller coaster day.
And in fact, I've interviewed both of you. I think, haven't I? Yeah.
Right in this building. Absolutely. It's crazy. Crazy.
Always was very impressed the last few years that the most interesting place to be was not Republican headquarters, not Democrat headquarters, but Libertarian headquarters. I thought, you guys have just done a great job building that party up and representing it so well.
Yeah, we appreciate that. It takes key volunteers and folks that are willing to get after it, and it's a cycle. It's always there's ups and downs and building momentum. I think the Henry County Democrats have done a great job lately. It seems like they have some really good momentum as well.
I think that they're back on the aggressive side of the track, and that's good to see. I think that it's very healthy to have competitive races, no matter what race you're talking about. And I think that's one of the problems I see with state politics. It's become so one-sided. I forget what is it 37 to 30? Well, it was 37-13 when I was there. It may be 41-9 now.
The state senate.
Yeah, state senate.
So in between your roles on the reporting side, you have had some dabbling in politics.
Yes.
You got to work for the Indiana State Senate, the Republican caucus.
Yes.
You did you were their spin guy for a few years.
The title was senior writer and editor. And
wait a minute. You worked for the government news agency before Mike Pence invented it? State-run news. You were the guy?
That position actually was created for me. I was between jobs, so to speak. I left the Courier in 2006. They had a new publisher. He and I didn't get along, and I decided it was in my best interest to leave. And then I started working for Tom Saunders, and because Tom needed some help, a campaign manager, a field manager. That was the year that Tom's son had been involved in the fatal accident. And there was this mystery about, okay, how is that going to affect his reelection chances?
Sure.
And so they felt like they needed somebody experienced with the media to kind of handle things. And so I worked for Tom and all through that campaign. And then after he was reelected, the job at the Senate came open. They were looking for a director. So I applied for the director's job. I knew Beverly Gard really well. I've known Beverly since the 80s.
She was the state senator who represented this area at the time.
Yes. And she and I always got along well. I think she had a lot of respect for me, and she said she would put in a good word for me. And I got a call from the president pro tem saying, well, would you take another job if it was offered? And I said, well, sure. And so they hired a guy by the name of Scott Manier to be the communications director. And they created this position for me called senior writer and editor. And my job there was to work with the 4 press secretaries. I edited everything that they would put out. my job was also to work individually with senators if they needed me for a special project. And so I wrote speeches, I wrote columns, I wrote press releases I think at one time I had done something for every senator there, which at the time was 37.
So was this a state of Indiana job or a political job for the senators?
This was technically it was a state of Indiana job.
Interesting.
because they funded the public relations aspect for both the Republicans and the Democrats. The Democrats had an office too.
Sure.
And so, our job was to represent and to work with the folks that were in office. And at the time, like I said, 37 of them. And I think the dividing line for the press secretaries, I think each one had 5 or 6 different people. And then I had a couple of people. I worked with Senator Gard. I wrote a weekly column for Senator Cruz and for Senator Long. Senator Long had a weekly newspaper in the Waynedale, Fort Wayne area. And so I worked really closely with the folks at that newspaper, got to know them well. Some of the folks I'd known anyway because of being in newspapers, and
Sure.
that helped me. That helped me a lot because I had these relationships already established. And I think that's why they were interested in hiring me in the first place.
And it's a relatively small community, right? You've got,
Yes.
the people that run the newspaper in Greensburg or Rushville know the folks in Henry
Right.
County or Shelbyville
Right.
or et cetera, et cetera.
And many of them had been like me there for a long time, you know. So it was a nice fit in that way for me to work with those newspapers and to help the 37 senators. And then I also was in charge of setting up availabilities, media availabilities. The President Pro Tem would have a press conference at least once a week, and my job was to get the word out on that press conference, to help set up the room, make sure everybody knew about it, and deliver any kind of advanced materials that might be needed for that.
Awesome. So you also have a book to plug.
Yes, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that. I became involved in local history in 1982. I really got the bug because my wife and I bought the News Republican, a weekly newspaper, and we ran that newspaper for 4 years and met Doug Majors. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Doug or not, but Doug has been a longtime historian and advocate of history here, and his collection of old pictures is just amazing. It's been a lifelong pursuit. He has bought these pictures at yard sales. He's had people give them to him. And I would say he's probably got thousands of old pictures.
Of Henry County and Newcastle history.
Of Newcastle and Henry County. And so this particular book that I have is called Images of America, Newcastle. And it's done by the Arcadia people. And it turned out really well. It's 2013 was when we published it. And I have some copies, and it has probably 180 pictures in it. And it's got some short vignettes with those photos to talk about the history of Newcastle. And I would like to offer these books for sale on your program, if it's okay with you guys.
Certainly.
If you mention to me in an email that you heard about this on Boss Hog of Liberty, I will sell the book, which normally sells for $20. I'll sell it to you for $15.
There we go.
And if someone wants to buy this out of state and have it mailed to them, I don't know if you have any out of state listeners or not.
All the way to Hawaii.
All the way to Hawaii.
Yeah.
If you will send me your address, I will pay the postage and the cost of the book would be $20. Woo! You'd have to send me a check for $20. But I will pay the postage, and would like to offer that for anybody that doesn't live in the Newcastle area
That needs it mailed. So what kind of date range are we talking about? We're talking from founding until the 60s, 70s. What kind of stuff are we talking?
It ranges from probably the late 1800s all the way up to the 1970s, I would say. You know.
You got some
actually
greenhouses in there.
1980. Yes, we do.
All right.
Greenhouses.
Well, it's worth the money just for the greenhouses.
1980s, because we've got Steve Alford in this book.
The definitive
Beautiful
explanation as to why we're the Rose City right there.
Yes. This community has so much history. It's just and I really was quite ignorant of it until I'd met Doug. I got to give a lot of credit to Doug Majors, because he's the one that kind of inspired me to get involved in local history and to start writing columns about it. Doug and I did a book in 1992, and it's a great big coffee table type book, and it's called Newcastle: A Pictorial History. And 3,000 copies of that were printed. They're all gone now. And the way this current book came about in 2013 was that a young man by the name of Ben Badgley called me, said, I think we need another book. He was interested in participating in a reprint of the 1992 book. Well, that company that printed that book is no longer in business. And they offered to sell us the manuscripts of it, or the templates of it, but the price was just so
not workable,
unbelievable.
Astronomical.
It just was not workable, and so we decided to come up with kind of a different book. There are some pictures in this book that are in the other book, and there are some pictures in this book that are not in the other book. But it kind of accomplishes the same purpose. It promotes Newcastle history. I think it's an interesting selection of photos. And like I say, it ranges from the late 1800s all the way up to
just from the top of my head, some Newcastle history that's around. We've got one of the original auto factories. The old Maxwell factory was here in town.
Yes.
Jesse French pianos were here. I know that from breaking my back carrying one into Aaron Dickens' basement when he moved.
There's a picture in this book, the Images of America book, of Vice President Charles Fairbanks, and he's riding in an open vehicle. And he's standing up and he's waving. And, you look at that picture and you think, man, you could not do that today.
Yeah.
You could not do that today, or you wouldn't last very long. But
and we really do have a lot of history to be pretty boastful of here in Henry County.
The Hoosier Cabinet Company as well.
yes. And there is material in here about the Hoosier Kitchen Cabinet. And, those things were sent everywhere. The roses were sent everywhere. The automobile heritage is so rich and so deep here, and I think always will be, even though the factories are gone. I still think that the work ethic that is still here with those folks is a heritage that thankfully remains. And,
some of the factories are gone, but Grady's still very much involved in manufacturing of automobiles now. TS Tech goes directly into the Honda assembly plant that's just down the road in Greensburg. So there's,
I think it's it's still a real strength of Henry County to show that this area knows how to manufacture things.
Yep.
One of some of the coolest pictures that I've seen, and I don't know if you know Richard Ratcliffe. He also has a huge
rival historian. That's like picking it.
I have tremendous respect for Dick, and in fact, Dick did a book called Henry County at the Millennium.
It's like the Jets and the Sharks, and you're just dragging it out here, Dakota.
Yep. He has some really cool pictures and there's some of like a Newcastle downtown in like the late 50s.
Yes, and I know the picture you're talking about. Yeah.
It's just incredible.
Yeah. All the people downtown, and now see, I'm old enough, and I guess conversely young enough to remember that going downtown when downtown was busy. You guys have never experienced that, probably.
Downtown Newcastle?
Downtown Newcastle.
Well, I mean, I used to take 20 minutes to go from one side of town to the other on a Friday night with the cruising broad.
The cruisins are big again, and which we should plug since we had Newcastle Main Street. We featured them on the podcast. Then
it is remarkable, and it's inspiring for me to see how it's come back. I think downtown looks better now than it has in years and years and years. But back in the day, my parents we'd go shopping on Saturday, and it would take Dad 2 or 3 trips around Broad Street to find a parking space.
Yeah,
and
Right up on that microphone for me, Darrell.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm backing off again.
Yep, it'll help. It'll help you later. I mean, there was a time when all of the auto dealerships were down here, and it's. I think 2 doors over from us was one of them, right here on Race Street. Always changing, just like the newspaper business.
Yes,
It's always
change
changing.
is relentless. Yes,
But now it's become more than a commerce place downtown. Their downtown communities, and Newcastle is doing it as much. It's becoming a gathering place, right? It's a place to
I
get
think that's the
together
key.
and
I really
come for
think that's the
concerts,
key. And I know
events.
people were criticizing Mayor York, who I think has done a tremendous job since he's been mayor. They were criticizing him for 1400 Plaza. But I had worked in Winchester at the paper there, and they were just starting a discussion of what can we do downtown to make it a gathering place, to have a centralized location. They were talking about building something, building a gazebo or some kind of facility. And I think Newcastle has done the right thing with 1400 Plaza because it's so versatile. And I think as years go by, you're just going to see more and more activity there with the concerts, with the cruise-ins, with the farmers market, which has been extremely popular, and with other things that are possible now because of 1400 Plaza.
Yeah, they're very complimentary. The Arts Park, 1400 Plaza, the restaurants, and hopefully additional businesses that are going to locate downtown.
Cruising this Saturday happening. Is it May 1st?
What's the auto that's featured, Mr. Burcham? Do you know?
I don't think they're doing features this year.
It's not Mopar night.
I don't know. They always waited so late to do. Excuse me. That was one of those things I was like, man, they would wait so long to do Mopar night. I was like, this is Newcastle. When I was a kid, every night was Mopar night. On the street. Like that was kind of a thing. But I don't
rolling in your neon.
I think they're still doing like a slightly tapered back version so far this year.
It's pretty cool. I enjoy the cruise-ins. We plan on going to this one as well. Let's talk, speaking about things that are big in the community, let's talk a little bit about Greg Pence.
Did you watch the president's speech last night?
I did not.
Darrell, did you tune in?
I didn't tune in live. I did watch some of the reporting afterwards.
Yeah. I did not, but same thing. I listened to some of the media accounts this morning. I wasn't under the weather, but I went to bed early yesterday. So I listened to the Google machine explain to me what happened, and I heard that there was not full attendance
Yes.
at the deal, and they had the 6 foot distancing, and apparently our congressman took the distancing so to heart.
He was very serious about it.
That he was, I believe, in Fayette County at a Republican dinner.
He was. He's in Fayette County, Indiana, at a Lincoln Day dinner. And he just said, he made a Facebook post and he said, there is no place that I would rather be tonight.
Yeah. So
you think that has something to do with the fact that his brother just signed a $4 million book deal with Simon & Schuster?
I don't know about that side of it. I know that the Indy Star, I looked today and they had reactions from a number of different, almost every congressman in Indiana, congressperson in Indiana. And the office of Greg Pence didn't have a reaction. They said nothing. And the only thing they said was he posted that he was happy to be at the Lincoln Day, which is great. If he was at my Lincoln Day dinner at my deal, I'd think that was great too. But at the same time, I'm like, man, you're really stabbing the knife in. I don't know the logistics, Darrell, of did this thing get called? It's 100 days after the president was in. So I assume that they kind of knew the date and what it was going to be, but maybe it's defensible and he already had an excuse to have been in the district. He probably
knew about 100 days ago.
It's possible that he had this scheduled before and this was scheduled first and he felt out of obligation to the folks over there that he should attend this. But, as we go forward and trying to mend this country from its political civil warfare, I think that it behooves all the state representatives to do what they can to work together, to try to find some common ground. It's very upsetting to me that we still have the my way or the highway politics, and compromise seems to be a forgotten word. I had heard somebody say when the presidential campaign was going on that if Biden won, the job of Republicans would be to oppose him at every turn and to make sure there was nothing that he could claim credit for. And I thought, how sad is that? Because we've got all these problems in America. How is that solving problems? Everyone, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, everyone should be focused on solving problems and not putting another political feather in their hat. And I don't know when that's ever going to end. It's very frustrating to me. And, I saw some of it firsthand when I worked at the State House. Politics has gotten to be such a terrible scourge that gets in the way of solving problems.
When we were going through campaign cycles, and you were excellent at this, of moderating events, forums, getting candidates engaged, our current Congressman Pence, hasn't done a debate in his entire time from when he declared that he was going to run until now. The only availability he ever has is if you show up at a Republican event. If you show up at a Lincoln Day, you might meet him. I've yet to meet the guy, and I've tried. He's been invited down here many times. It's a very, unfortunately, the way that maps are drawn, this is all that he has to do. But I'm not sure that it's good for the conversation or for the country to have somebody that can just behave this way. And
it
no
definitely
problem.
isn't. It definitely isn't. And I can guarantee you that there are advisors talking to him in his ear saying, "Don't go to this. There's no need for you to go to this."
It's only downside.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The only thing that can happen is something that would be negative to you or to a future campaign. And again, are we really in the best interest of solving problems with that kind of mindset? I think you and I talked on Messenger earlier today, and I posed the question: where are the statesmen? Do we have any more statesmen? People that can work with others across the aisle. Now, some will tell you that does happen behind the scenes, and the news media doesn't pick up on it. And the news media is probably another problem. I mean, I'm to the point sometimes, Jeremiah, where I can't hardly stand to watch the evening news, and there's a running joke between my wife and I of how many minutes of Meet the Press I can stand. I'll turn Meet the Press on, and okay, is it going to be 7 this week, 10 this week? When is Chuck Todd going to tick me off to the point where I just turn it off or turn the channel? And I think it's unfortunate. I think it's unfortunate the direction that politics has taken. And I think until we get to the point where we focus more on problems than we do on political parties, it's not going to change. It's not going to change. I thought that was awful to hear that if Biden wins, the Republicans' job is to make sure that he doesn't get anything passed that he can take credit for. And that's not what I send my representatives to do. I send them there to solve problems.
Send them there to go do the work, right?
I want them to solve problems. And, the day when we don't have any problems, okay, you can play politics all you want. The immigration situation. How long has immigration been a problem?
Yeah, it hasn't been wholeheartedly addressed since the Ronald Reagan administration.
Yeah,
right?
At least 40 years.
Right. And, there's been talk of a major infrastructure bill. That's the next thing, right? They got their coronavirus solution, and now it's infrastructure. Well, infrastructure is taking the conversation the last 2 months has been, well, let's define infrastructure in a way that one side gets everything they want and the other side doesn't have to participate.
Sometimes it seems to me that there needs to be a change in the structure of what constitutes a bill, and that these amendments that are thrown into the bill at the last minute, those ought to be limited. And I know the Senate had a rule when we were there that it has to be germane.
Right.
But germane probably has a definition that's really, really broad.
In Indiana, the General Assembly seems to do a much better job of legislators actually serving on committees, working on legislation. You have an author, it goes through a process, and the committees actually do the work. In DC, it's 4 or 5 people make a decision, and then the bill comes out, and it never goes through a committee. It never goes through a first reading, second reading. It's here it is. You guys, yes or no? Let's go and move on to the next one.
And more often than not, it's like 100 pages long or 200 pages long, and
Nobody has a clue.
They give it to you at the last minute, so there's no time to really. I mean, who knows what's in it?
And then you ask the whip what you're supposed to do, and they say yes. So you go, alrighty, here we go. Or they title it like the Clean Air Act. You're not going to vote no against clean air. But meanwhile, in the middle of the Clean Air Act, it's like we're going to add $300 million a year for funding for Saudi Arabia. Huh?
Jeremiah, I want to know where all the ink is going to come from to keep printing this money. From what I hear, President Biden had some really good ideas, and the Democrats as a party have had some really good ideas, and they're hard to argue with. How in the world are we going to pay for it?
We haven't stopped spending in years. Both groups,
right? Both parties
that have held Congress,
You're
both
right.
that have held. I don't think anybody takes it seriously any longer.
I remember when Mitch Daniels was toying around with an idea of running for president.
Mm-hmm.
And I think his campaign focus was going to be called, we've got to deal with the big red menace. And the big red menace is the debt.
Yeah. Deficit spending and debt.
And in some ways I was disappointed that he didn't make a run, because I think that he might have been the voice needed to stop this madness, to stop this spending madness. And I'm not sure that there's an end in sight for that.
Once your side gets to be in charge, you don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Coming from the third party side, coming from the libertarian side, you can just literally watch. I'm in charge today, and Dakota's side's not. And then we're just when we change seats, we're gonna change notes, and we're gonna talk the other side. It's just theater. That's all it is.
My brother, who's a retired accountant, he used to have a saying. He said, "It's the golden rule. Those who have the gold make the rules."
Yeah.
Speaking of numbers that are really high, we had a truck that exceeded 100 miles per hour in Henry County today.
And that's newsworthy?
Yeah. Listen, we've talked about the max speeds that we've reached in our vehicles. I think all three of us have on this show before. But the only difference is we didn't have 15 police cars following us at the time. That was the case today in Henry County whenever there was a report of a stolen Ford F-250 with a camper shell on the back. It was a dually. And
that's a recognizable vehicle.
Yep.
I heard the sirens on that. I live just off Western Road, and I heard a series of sirens, and it really piqued my interest. I thought something big is going on, because it sounded like 6 or 7 vehicles at least.
It was, yeah. A Newcastle police officer heard that there was a stolen vehicle, and then he happened to see it at a stoplight and thought, that looks a lot like that stolen vehicle that I've heard about. So he decides to try to pull the vehicle over, and the dude doesn't stop. It
got exciting, huh?
Mm-hmm. He acted like he was going to stop for a second, and then as soon as the police officer slowed down, he guns it. He just takes off going down, I think it was 3.
Southbound on State Road 3 to, It sounds like it wound up in Hancock County and then in Rush County. So this is quite the chase.
He acted like he was going to stop at the Casey's General Store.
Well, that's where all of the police are. It's a great place to stop and turn yourself in.
And then he went, haha, joke's on you. And he went back on Riley Road and just took off going.
He went on Riley. No wonder my wife said she heard all the sirens today living in that neighborhood.
He went through the middle of Newcastle.
Wow.
Where there's kids and people. It's a good thing it was a nasty rainy day and there wasn't anybody out except for Zach Burcham running.
Zach, did you get run over today?
No, I waited till the rain was over before, and I usually I'll get on the sidewalk if I hear sirens. But
so yeah, this guy he gets out on the open road, and they're saying he's going 80 miles an hour. He's going 90 miles an hour. We've reached 100 miles an hour. This is on 40, and then they're like, we're gonna put out the stop sticks in Knightstown, which are these. And it's basically how you stop a vehicle. It blows the tires. Well, he just decides to go the wrong direction on 40.
Cross the median.
And he's like, I see the stop six. I'm no idiot. And he just goes in the wrong direction. He gets around him and gets back on the other side of 40. And he just keeps on going. Makes it to Greenfield. They had already contacted Hancock County Sheriff's Department. They put out stop six in Hancock County. He does the same exact thing, just goes around him. I don't know why they weren't like...
Maybe they need longer stop sticks.
Curb to curb, guys. Curb to curb.
Yeah.
On a divided highway, it becomes more difficult.
There's a video that I saw of that a person made in Greenfield. It's the middle of downtown Greenfield. Like you can see the signs on the stoplights where it's like 109 is that way.
It's amazing that nobody was hurt.
Yeah.
It's just
I
amazing.
missed most of this story. I saw the little Channel 6 one, and I was surprised that one of their reporters was out there, but obviously this went on for quite some time.
It went on for an hour. A full hour. He led the police on
Did they stop for fuel?
It's a big
In
diesel.
Greenfield.
It's probably got a 50-gallon diesel tank on it.
Just outside of Greenfield, he's like, I'm going to make a turn to the south. So he cuts it south, winds up in Rush County, goes off the road. I don't know if they put out stop six again or what, but he goes off the road and he's driving in a cornfield to get away from the cops, and then stops his vehicle, probably because the cornfield is muddy right now, and he gets stuck because, Well,
the picture I saw, it looked like he might have made contact with one of those heavy-duty utility poles. There's a picture of the truck. The left rear wheel is not facing in the direction it should be facing.
Yeah.
And there's a steel utility pole on the ground behind it. So
I don't understand the mindset of someone who gets involved in something like that. I mean, does he really think it's going to end well?
Well, what's funny is there was another chase in Henry County last weekend, Friday night, and it went through a friend's yard, a friend of mine. And
I saw the post.
He slept through it completely, and his wife kind of recalls waking up and hearing sirens and seeing lights, but they live on a highway, so it's not uncommon to have them go by the house. He comes into town, runs with me. He gets home, and he looks, and it looks like an episode of The Dukes of Hazzard's been filmed in his yard. There's just tracks off the highway, just weaving through his yard, like between some trees, and then across the fence line. And he's taking pictures and sending them to me. He thought this was hilarious. And then when he crossed the fence line, they ran over a fence post. There's parts of the car just strewn in the field. And then that's evidently where the chase ended. But yeah, it was the same thing. I was like, the minute he left the road, unless that guy was going to go full send through a creek, it's done. He's caught. There's no way he's getting away.
This guy got out of the truck, and decided to take off running.
Yeah, K9 was involved, right?
He hides behind a bar. He's like, I'm going to dart behind this bar. I don't know what bar it was. They said it was a bar, but I heard on the scanner barn, but the article I read said bar.
Fake news.
Yeah, whatever. We'll go with their story. And then they released the dogs, and they got him. And they called, the last thing that I heard on the scanner, because I was listening to it, I was riding my bike, and my wife texted me, and she's like, oh my God, look in the Henry County Scanners group right now. And I was like, I read the post, and the admin of that group was just constantly updating everything she heard on the scanner. So I pulled up my scanner app and was listening to it. And the last thing that I heard on the scanner app before they took it offline for some reason was they were calling them medics. So
the Henry County Scanner Facebook page is really, really a nice page.
She does a good job.
Great admiration for Rhonda.
That's her name.
I think, is it Carrie, I think is the other one.
So does this make for a big day in the newsroom if something like this happens, Darrell?
Yes, generally speaking,
exciting?
yes. Well, now, see, back in the day, we would have the scanner. We had scanners in the newsroom the whole time I was there as managing editor. And the scanner has disappeared. That's another thing that I missed when I went back, was that the scanner was no longer there. And there's an argument to be had that, people think when something like that happens, we ought to get out there and start chasing them right away. And it doesn't make sense really for us to do that, except maybe for a photo op or something like that, because you're not going to be able to get information right away anyway. The officers involved have to file a report. And so it's not good use of newspaper time anymore because our resources are scattered so thin to chase something like that. That's the kind of a thing that you wait until the event is over and then you talk to the officer. Again, from a picture standpoint, you might be able to get a decent picture, but you're not going to be able to write the story until the report is filed.
It's a different era as well. At
Yes,
one time,
that's right.
At one time, there were photojournalists that
Yes.
worked for the paper.
Yes.
Versus now, it was Darrel with his iPhone that would have to take the picture, and it's just different.
One of the most surprising things to me, I never thought I would take as many pictures in the last 5-6 years as what I've taken on my cell phone. The joke was at home, if there was a picture to be taken at an event, you didn't want me to take it. Becky usually took it because she didn't like the way I took pictures. I wasn't very good then, and I've gotten a little better now because you have to do it.
Yeah.
You just have to do it. There's no other, it's expected.
Right. They used to send John. John used to be the
John,
guy
and before
Courier.
John, Ron Tower. Do you guys know Ron?
Yep.
Ron was
In the 90s, Ron was doing it as well.
Yeah, Ron and I went to ball games together. Before Ron, or actually during the time he served, Ernie Klotz. You guys recognize that name?
Is it related to Katie?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think that it's Klotz. I think
Okay.
it's not Klontz. It's
Klotz.
Klotz.
Okay. All right.
But Ernie was kind of a legend back in those days because you'd see him at all the accidents. You'd see him at a lot of the major functions. And it was such a great relief as a reporter to go to a game or go to an event, and all you had to worry about was taking notes.
You had to get the story.
And get the story, and somebody else took care of the pictures. And, now when I retired, if I had to go cover an event, a lot of times I would not take a notebook with me. I would take my tape recorder, and I would tape record the event, and I would take pictures while the tape recorder was running because I had to take pictures. There was no other photographer available. And then that created a more arduous process because then you got to go home.
Now you're linearly going back through it again.
You're going back through it again. Exactly. So it took a little more time that way. And, maybe the critics out there might say, well, gee, you could take notes and take pictures at the same time. And just for me, it never worked very well. I mean, I'm sure you could, but, it just always seemed easier to get a better picture. You had to be ready. I mean, you can't wait when you're taking a note, and then if something happens,
the moment that comes along,
and then say, well, could you guys repeat that? I mean, you can't really do that in some situations anyway. So yeah, that's a complication of today's reporting, and it probably sounds like I'm complaining and griping, but
you're an old reporter. You're allowed to.
Yeah. Hey, that's right. Yeah.
As somebody who attends city council meetings, you were one of the people that was thankfully was on the ball during the kind of the pandemic when they were going through different venues, specifically the Armory, where the audio would be a nightmare. And I would feel bad for you because I'm like, Darrel got 10,000 steps standing up and moving the mic around to the various people because they wouldn't pick a mic up and you couldn't hear anything. I'm like, we're all going to know what's going on because Darrel's making sure that we know what's going on. So Darrel knows what's going on so he can write about it in the paper.
Thank you for that. It was irritating to me. And I had nothing against having the meeting somewhere else. I think that's fine. But, I was sitting back there with other folks, and I even asked, I said, can you hear what's going on?
You couldn't hear anything.
You couldn't. And, these are important issues. Why have a public meeting if no one can hear?
So open door and public meetings have been a very, very real struggle the last year and a half or 2 years in this community. It's just
I would be.
We get a lot of folks that say that we're trying to fix that, but we've not been very successful yet.
I would have the sheet of paper that tells me what they are discussing. I would be in there sitting. I would walk out and I'm like, well, I'm going to have to read what Darrel put because I have no idea what just happened. And I was sitting in the room.
I hate to, and I always tried not to be that guy that was always intrusive and in the way and trying to get in the way of the event. But in the case of that city council meeting, I went whenever whoever was speaking next, I put my tape recorder right in front of him. I actually walked up and put it right in front of him because I knew if I didn't,
You wouldn't get it.
I wouldn't get it. You could not hear. You could not hear. So, the Armory is a great place, but it's a terrible place from a sound situation standpoint for a public meeting.
Yep. Speaking of things being different because of COVID.
So James Briggs is the editorial writer for the Indianapolis Star now. And I don't find a lot of times where my opinions and James Briggs' opinions cross. And maybe that's the way editorial writers are supposed to be. They're supposed to just tick you off and irritate you. But today he wrote something that I said, damn it, the guy's finally right. He said that the IMS gate temperature scanning, Indianapolis Motor Speedway is getting ready to have 135,000 fans Memorial Day weekend. It's going to be the largest gathering of people, of humans in one place since the pandemic began. IMS has been doing all kinds of vaccinations. They've been doing great work. And we have become conditioned as we go to these events that there are certain things that we do. You're expected to have a mask, so you're going to get free hand sanitizer when you go. You're going to get your temperature taken. We've just gotten this routine of if you're going to do an event with all these people, this is just the stuff we do. And James is pointing out that the science doesn't say that we need to be doing these temperature scans anymore. And this is the largest gathering of humans for a sporting event. And it's going to be a precedent setter that if we do it now, if we do it for this event, the next thing's going to copy it, right? The next big race, the football games this fall, et cetera, Pacer games, whatever we get into. And he says everybody passes. Nobody has a problem. By the way, you're walking at half a mile or a mile from your car on what might be a 90-degree day. So you're going to get a false positive of being hot anyway. And the first few weeks the fever was what mattered. Everybody was worried about the fever. Now we've determined that you don't have to have, you can be COVID positive, or fever is not really correlated. So James wrote the story saying, hey, we've got the chance here to stop this, to not set this precedent. And he made the point of the TSA in the theater that's there as well. And it got me thinking, and I was hoping you guys would weigh in and brainstorm a little bit or have this conversation. It's the same as taking off your shoes in the airport or not being able to take your bottle of water through. And I'll get into the beetles in a second too, which I think is the ash borer beetle. But is the guy nuts? Is he crazy? Or are we just griping about anything to gripe now? Or are we just mad, Dakota?
No, I think he's right. At this point, I think that we just need to go. We have a vaccine. President Biden said last night that we have 200 million needles in arms. And that's a big milestone. The census said we have 330 million people in this country now. And with those numbers, we're already over what Fauci first said could be considered herd immunity in this nation. So at this point, you've got the shot or you're comfortable with not having the shot.
It's an outdoor event.
It's an outdoor event. This virus, the data says that it dies in sunlight.
They're going to be socially distanced. You're not going to be sitting directly next to anybody that you didn't show up with.
What my point is just we just need to get back to actual normal, not new normal. The way things were in November of 2019, not the way things are. Nothing new. It just needs to be back to where it was.
I think we're close. I don't know that facilitators, the owner of an event, the promoter of an event is willing to be the first one to say, yep, we're completely normal. There's risk to that of the optics of the big problem happened at your event.
Yeah, it's the optics of
it.
The
PGA doesn't want to say, well, you know what happened at the U.S. Open this year or at the Masters, that all these people got together in Georgia and everybody got sick because nobody wore masks. So
you know what I say to those people? Grow some balls.
Is there a liability factor in all of this? I mean, is that part of
potentially
the hesitation?
I think a lot of it's really the optics of Miller Lite is a massive sponsor of the Speedway. they don't want somebody coming after Miller Lite saying, "Hey, Miller, you're supporting these people who don't care," right? So now we're going
They're
to
worried
boycott
about
Miller Lite.
the people on Twitter that would get upset about this.
It's the same reason why you had everybody socially distanced in Congress. A few hundred members sit together on a national speech wearing their masks, even though they're all vaccinated. Right. That's the point of vaccinations.
Right, yeah.
Is so that we don't have to do that, but we're doing it to set the example.
In a nation of 330 million people, they're worried about 1,000 angry tweets.
Zach, what do you say?
Puts it in perspective.
Yeah, if it doesn't help, it's not going to help. It's also going to add another choke point. It's going to slow things down getting people in. And the worst moment for people getting congested will be getting into the track because everybody will show up at about the same time.
They're going to stack up at the same moment.
And the closest I've ever been to anybody is not in the grandstands. It's waiting when I'm in a group of probably 20,000 people standing on Georgetown waiting to get through security. So if they're going to have to scan everybody's forehead, and if we're standing, it's always 90 degrees. So yeah, half the people will probably be hot because they've been standing on Georgetown for 15 minutes trying to get scanned to get in.
Dragging their cooler in.
Yep. Their 14 by 14 by 14 cooler.
What I want to know is why don't they show this live on television in the Indianapolis market?
It probably will be this year.
They said what will probably happen this year is that if they sell out the 135,000 seats, which they probably will, because it's just a threshold of people who still wanted to go who had already bought tickets. If they sell that out, they will probably do it, but they will wait until they have hit capacity.
It's always kind of irked me that they haven't shown that race live, because I think most people who go to the race are going to go anyway, that having it on TV is not going to keep them from going, that they enjoy the experience, that for them it's more than a race, it's an experience, it's a social gathering event, it's something cool that they have a tradition of doing. And I see no reason why that race should not be aired live.
Why there's a local blackout.
Yes.
Yeah. It goes back. It's very similar to the NFL's rules with blackouts and what they would have. And if they weren't officially sold out, I think it's aired live twice now, Zach, in my memory. It aired live in 2016 for the 100th running.
That race was sold out.
When it was truly sold out and they quit selling general admission tickets. And then last year, because nobody was allowed in, it was shown live. I think this will be the third year because you're going to get to that 135,000. But go past that, yeah, it's a get your ticket or go to Dayton and watch TV.
Yeah.
You're camping there, right?
Yeah, this is I'll be on just off Georgetown on the outside of the track. It's a developing story as to what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do. Not going to be normal.
Are you taking firewood?
I don't know. Don't know yet. I know that if I do, I can't use it. I can't burn it on the ground. I have to have it off the ground.
My wife and I went one time. I was working at the radio station in 1987, and they had a raffle for a staff member to win a pair of tickets, and I was the lucky winner. And so we went, and we thought we had left in plenty of time. We left at, I think, 5 o'clock in the morning, and got in the most horrendous traffic jam. We were rookies and probably didn't go the right way or whatever, but the most horrendous traffic jam I have ever been a part of. Vehicles were not moving. People were not even in their vehicles. They were outside. It took forever. And my wife was really upset that by the time we got to our seats, the things that she wanted to see, the Jim Neighbors.
You've missed the pomp and circumstance.
We missed it all. We missed it all. The balloons.
What year?
It was 1987. And actually, though, the race was very entertaining that year.
Al Unser won his fourth.
Because Al Unser won his fourth. And that was the year, Jeremiah, if you remember, Mario Andretti dominated the entire month. And I kid you not,
broke on the backstretch.
During the race, we were sitting right there on the main straightaway, great seats. And you'd see Mario come around the corner, and you'd see him disappear around the other corner, and there was no other car behind him. He was gone before the next car came around him. That's how far ahead he was. And then when he had the problem, and Roberto Guerrero took over first place, the roar of that crowd was just unbelievable. And I don't know. I don't know if there's a dislike of the Andretti family there, or if it was just the moment that Roberto Guerrero, well, I don't know if he was rookie that year or what, took over first place, but then he had problems, and then Al Unser was just in the right place at the right time and won number 4.
In a car that started the month of May in a museum in Pennsylvania. Yeah,
What a story.
Yeah, that's an all-time epic one. And Mario never did win another, and his son and grandson haven't either.
Yeah.
What are you upset about with the ash trees?
So here's the
What do
deal.
you have against them?
We can't bring firewood into parks, into state parks, into campgrounds, and it's the same. It's the same theater conversation. There was a rule that was put in place 15 years ago that said, don't bring firewood from out of your community, out of your county. Don't bring it in from more than 15 or 20 miles away, because you're going to bring this beetle in, which, by the way, has killed every damn ash tree that we have now. They're dead and gone and done, but we're still worried about the bugs. We're still worried about the emerald ash borer beetle. So it's the same thing. We do it always this way, so we're done. We're not going to have our shoes on in the airport. We're going to take a temperature check, because that's what we do now when you come into the speedway, and you have to buy your firewood from the gas station that's been kiln dried, or they're selling it at the venue. Now it becomes, hey, it's a revenue stream where we've got businesses and industries that are set up so that I have to sell you this firewood.
It used to be that you could bring in your firewood
if it's debarked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's debarked.
Yeah.
Which,
you're going to debark your firewood, right?
We always did.
Sure.
Just another example of
Not a big
liberties going away, isn't it?
It's a slippery slope, right? You say, okay, fine, yes, we'll do it, and then you just become conditioned to it, Darrell.
It wouldn't be so bad.
But there's
if they
real
sold-
problems with the emerald ash borer.
if they sold.
They've won. We've lost to the beetle now. It's
No,
over.
not yet. There's
It's
a
done.
lot of
Go
hardworking.
find me an ash tree.
There's a lot of hardworking arborists in the state of Indiana that are trying to get the ash tree population back up in Indiana's state forests.
They're dead.
And national parks.
We've lost them.
They could at least sell good firewood, but the firewood they sell are these little bundles. They're about the size of
I'll
a
agree with
basketball in
that.
diameter. They're like $6 to $7 a bundle, and
Yep.
they're so dry.
They
and so
burn in 40
small
seconds.
That they burn in 15 seconds. Yeah, I went on a trip to Tennessee recently. Couldn't find anywhere else. Sometimes you can find a local spot to buy cheaper firewood just outside the park.
Yep.
That's acceptable, but there was no place near this place because the campground was in the middle of nowhere, and I spent $78 on firewood in 4 days.
Wow.
And I'm like, that's stupid. And my brother made the mistake of going to a park, and they said, hey, did you bring your own firewood? And he's like, yeah. And like, is it debarked? And he's like, no. And they confiscated it and threw it in a dumpster, and then gave him 2 free bundles of wood for his troubles and said, you can keep what you can burn the next 6 hours.
By the way, you're the first person to ever admit to bringing firewood in.
And they told him that.
Yeah. Yeah, you never admit to it. My dad had a shell on the back of his truck, and we would always bring in ash tree because we had a big
Because they're
ash
dead. Because the Beatles won.
But if a tree is dead for a long time, you cut it down, you split all the wood, the vast majority of the bark is just going to come off.
I have some old firewood in my house, and it's naturally debarked.
Yeah. So it's just kind of, it works out. Nature
Finds a way.
I was trying to tie that back into that, but it's not the same.
It's okay.
The Jeff Goldblum quote.
Yeah.
Life finds a way.
I feel like we can give up. We've lost the battle to the Beatles. We can have our firewood back.
Well, the first year that Audrey and I moved into our house, we had to cut down 9 dead ash trees.
Yeah, because they already won. They won before you were out of high school.
No, they haven't won yet.
Give up the dream.
They're working.
I can remember at one point there were quarantine counties a long time ago, and it was you weren't supposed to bring it from one county to another, but now the whole state's.
Another problem brought to us by China. How it is.
Buckle up for the cicada. I bet the cicadas are involved. It's big cicada. Cicada. They are cicadas. They're the ones that are going to be responsible for
You
the
have
ash borer
lived
dying.
in Henry County for the past 27 years of your life.
Let me have this one word. You screw up 45 different words a month. I'm gonna go with cicada.
Cicada. It's not. Is that even? Do they even say it like that in New York?
Well, how would you pronounce the word?
It's cicada.
You're drunk. All right, Zach, final thoughts. Anything we forgot?
No, not off the top of my head.
Let me give that email address again for the book.
Absolutely.
And I forget if I gave it the first time or not.
Well, we'll end up tagging you in this as well. So
Okay.
we'll tag you on the Facebook side.
Okay.
But what is the email address? Darrell?
The email address is d.radford, Radford, at Comcast.net.
At Comcast.net.
d.radford at Comcast.net. Send me an email. Tell me you heard this and that you'd like a copy of the book. And we will sell it to you for $15 if we can make arrangements to get it to you in town. And if you need it mailed, the book will cost $20, but I'll take care of the postage.
Awesome.
So
you'll even wait in line at the post office for you.
I absolutely will.
Because you're retired now and you have
I'm
the time.
retired and I've got the time. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Dakota, my cousin Donnie's in the chat, and he wants to. He's a first responder in Florida, and he wants to remind us to push the vaccines. I got my last one this week.
I remember Donnie.
On Thursday. Donnie's a former guest on the show.
Yep.
American hero, fireman, rescue squad.
I've had both of
Helicopter
mine
EMT.
and had no problems with mine. And I would encourage people to, now my son Derek, he's a conspiracy theorist, and there's no way in heck he's going to get that. But I encourage people to do. And my wife and I, neither one had any problems with the vaccine. We got the Moderna one.
My wife and I got the Pfizer. Sarah had a little struggle on Saturday. She got a little cold and shivery, but she lived. We made it through. I slept I slept great after the first one. Best night's sleep of my life. The first 2 nights. This one I had nothing happen at all. I was super tired this week, but I did a double plasma or platelet for the blood center on Monday night, and then Wednesday night I was wiped out. I think they're unrelated. I think if you get the vaccine, then you decide you're going to go donate, five quarts of fluids, you're probably setting yourself up for getting your ass kicked.
Yeah.
But
Don't do that.
yeah, but I did it and I lived. I'm still here. We made the post. We made the show.
I'm going to plug the Broad Street Cruise-In in Newcastle one more time. It's going to be a fun time. All those were fun times. There's also the vendor event at L&K Produce that is happening on this Saturday. They're going to have food trucks and vendors and things out there. I plan on going to that as well. It should be a good time. We've always had a good time at those as well. I think that's it. Donnie should come back on the show sometime. He was a really fun guest. He's the one that made me start taking first aid pretty seriously. Inspired me to go for EMR training. So
There you go.
yeah, shout out to Donnie.
There we go. Awesome.
I want to hear some Florida man stories from him. He's got some Florida man stories.
As a helicopter EMT, I'm sure he has a ton.
Oh man, yep. He's Donnie just completed watching his Facebook. He just finished building a pool in the Casa de Morrell down there in on the Gulf Coast of Florida. And if anybody wants to join me, Boss Hog Hangout Saturday morning at my house, we're going to be opening the pool for the season. The cover comes off, and we're going to see what kind of terror is under the cover.
Yet.
Well, I mean, we got a pool party in July, but we got to get it started now.
If he sees any hanging chads, please let me know.
There we go. All right, guys, this has been awesome. Appreciate Darrell very much. This is long overdue.
Thank you very much.
We'll
Enjoyed being here.
We'll be back next week.
Thank you for listening to the Boss Hog of Liberty, which is part of the We Are Libertarians Network. I am Chris Spangle, and I am the founder of this network, and I invite you to listen to all of our shows, which you can find at WeAreLibertarians.com or by searching for these in your podcatcher. The flagship show is the We Are Libertarians podcast, where we apply libertarian principles to current events. The Brian Nichols Show is a conversation amongst Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, Independents, as they talk about what is happening in the news. And we have many other podcasts like The Chris Spangle Show, Upward, The Cost, Raw Audio Politics, Miranda's World, and Tad Talk, which is quite a ride. So check all of these out. Go to WeAreLibertarians.com and you can check out all of our great podcasts. Thanks for listening. Thank you for listening to the We Are Libertarians Network. Get our other shows at WeAreLibertarians.com.